Yo, YouTube, what's up with your boy? Sports and Fitness Rants. I'm back, guys. Click that like button. Subscribe to my channel. What's up, y'all? Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. Got another great video for you guys today. As usual, you guys know the deal on this channel. We must continue to set the record straight. Stop the lies. Stop the narratives. Stop them from rewriting the history. And in this video, I want to talk about some of the broadcasters that I grew up watching. And I want to just, focus on a couple of guys. And shout out to my man, Owen Smith. He requested this video, and I completely forgot about it. And I'm sorry. I had, done some thinking about this, and I was going to do a video a couple of weeks ago, and I completely forgot. Things have got out of hand here now with all the nonsense going on in the NBA. But I wanted to talk about some of the broadcasters and how, like I tell you guys on this channel, they educated us. When you listen to games back in the day, they educated you on the history of the game. They put things into context, right? They always gave you historical perspective when you were watching these games. And we're going to talk about in this video, man, some of the broadcasters that I remember. And I want to thank you guys, man, everyone across the world, everyone across the states has been supporting my channel, guys. Once again, I am truly, truly humbled by all support, guys, for real. It means a lot. Thank you to everyone out there. Like I said, shout out to my man, Owen Smith. Thank you very much for the continued support and for requesting this video. And you guys know what to do. Turn the volume all the way up. Hit that play button. Remember, these videos are for educational purposes. And let's roll. So, yes, guys, like I said, shout out to my man Owen Smith for requesting this video about broadcasters that, I grew up watching, or some of the guys that I remember watching and what they meant. Like I said, on this channel, guys, I've told you many times that the broadcasters today, the guys that are calling these games, not all of them, but a large portion of them, they're not educating the fans. They're not educating the viewer. So if you don't know the history of the game and you're watching a game, a current NBA game, they're not going to give you any historical knowledge, any historical perspective. They're not going to educate you on the facts. What they're going to give you when you watch a game now is a bunch of hyperbolic statements, a bunch of generic opinions, and a bunch of narratives. This is what they're going to throw out there, a bunch of narratives. That's all they do now. They talk in narratives. You hear these guys like Stan Van Gundy. This guy's a clown, Stan Van Gundy. I can't listen to Stan Van Gundy call a game. Stan Van Gundy. Reggie Miller, and I love Reggie Miller. I respect him as a player. As a player, his career, I respect him, man. Like I said, he gave the effort. He was out there, Reggie Miller. He was a true competitor. But as far as broadcasting goes, guy's a clown. He's a straight joke, Reggie Miller. I can't listen to Reggie Miller speak because, once again, he talks a lot of narratives, man. And once again, a lot of hyperbolic, nonsensical statements from these guys. They're not educating you or giving you the historical perspective, all right? No one wants to. J.J. Redick, is he a great announcer? No. These guys are terrible, man. Terrible announcers. They're not doing anything but just talking nonsense, narratives, and giving some nonsensical opinions during the game. They're not giving you the historical facts. Remember, facts are facts, guys. Historical facts are historical facts. It's the historical records. It's there, black and white. These guys try to bend that reality, rewrite the history, and give you a bunch of narratives, just a bunch of statements. Oh, this guy's the greatest player of all time. He's the most competitive player in the history of the game. Bunch of nonsense, man. These are the greatest athletes ever. This is the most competitive era of NBA ever. More narratives and opinions based off of those narratives, man. Bunch of lies. So when we think about some of the players, some of the broadcasters that I grew up watching in the 90s, let's say, for example, the 90s, I kept going back to the same guys, man. I kept thinking about the same couple of names. And I don't want to go through a bunch of names in this video and make this a super long video. But I've talked to you guys many times about Hubie Brown on this channel. And to me, Hubie Brown was one of the guys that you could listen to. You could listen to Hubie Brown call a game, announce a game, give a broadcast during a game. When I was growing up, Hubie Brown was still coaching in the NBA. So when we think about Hubie Brown and you listen to Hubie Brown on the broadcast, man, to me, Hubie Brown always had great info, always had great historical perspective. So if he's calling a game and he sees something on the game, he can give you and break down what he's seeing and then give you some context as to how things were done maybe in the 70s, maybe even in the 60s and in the 80s. Give you that perspective. Give you some context behind what he's saying and what he's explaining to you. He educated you on the facts. He wasn't there saying a bunch of nonsensical statements and giving you a bunch of emotion and a bunch of narratives. He was educating you on the history of the game and the perspective historically, right? You saw that video I posted about Hubie Brown breaking down the hand-checking rule, right? And talking about what hand-checking did, what it meant to the defenders, and how it really impacted the game when they got rid of that. What that allowed defensive guys to do, the advantage it gave them on the defensive end. He broke it down. He explained it. He educated the people listening. You were educated. He didn't make up a bunch of nonsensical statements. He educated you and he broke it down exactly what the hand check was, what these guys were able to do, and why it made it harder for you to score on that end. Why the game was a lot more physical in those eras. Education, Hubie Brown. I could always listen to him. Another guy that I could always listen to was Walt Clyde Frazier. Walt Clyde Frazier, to me, speaks very eloquently. The language he uses, the vocabulary that he uses when he speaks. You know, he'll use words like, oh man, the New York Knicks going with the gusto. You know, he'll say styling and profiling. You know, these are the kinds of things that, you know, Walt Clyde Frazier uses. Walt Clyde Frazier's got swag second to none. We all know about Walt Clyde Frazier and his style, his swag. But the way that he carries himself, the way that he speaks on the broadcast is fantastic. Once again, he educates you and he gives you perspective historically, right? Like I said, he educates you on the game. He breaks down the game. And like I said, the way that he speaks keeps you engaged in that game. So shout out to my man, Walt Clyde Frazier. We all know he's one of the all-time great players, but he's also one of the all-time great color commentators or broadcasters around. To me, Walt Clyde Frazier, sensational, man. So shout out to him. You guys know how I feel about Bob Costas on here. Bob Costas, another guy that I used to listen to back in the 90s. This guy, man, Bob Costas to me, like a Walt Clyde Frazier, similar, not as stylish or swaggy as a Walt Clyde Frazier, but Bob Costas had a way with words. He would have these intros, especially during the NBA Finals. You guys all remember Bob Costas in the NBA Finals. But if you remember, Bob Costas always had great intros to the NBA Finals, whether it was Game 1 or Game 2, Game 3. You guys remember the intros? What was it, ABC or NBC, whatever it was. Bob Costas always had a great intro, man. The things that he said, the way that he said it. The guy was like a great storyteller, man, a great narrator. So shout out to Bob Costas, man. To me, like I said, I always liked him and the way that he spoke about things. Once again, he would give you historical perspective. He would educate you guys, man. And like I said, he was just great at telling a story, man. And like I said, giving you the background to a lot of these things, man. Putting these things into perspective, man. So shout out to Bob Costas. Like I said, I always liked him. No, there's been many guys, you know, over the years. Like I said, I didn't want to go too many names, but to me, the tandem that I always liked, and I don't know why, man. I mean, I know why, but these guys to me, Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. Now, some of you guys might not remember who Mike Fratello is or who the hell is Mike Fratello. The Czar of the Telestrator. That's what he was called. Mike Fratello, the Czar. They call him the Czar of the Telestrator. This guy was sensational on the Telestrator. The X's and O's, the lines, you know, you guys remember, if you remember watching Marv Albert and Mike Fratello, they were a great duo, man, calling these games. I remember them calling the 1991 NBA Finals. I remember 1992 when Magic Johnson joined the booth. You had Mike Fratello, Marv Albert, and Magic Johnson calling the games. I remember all this stuff, man. And I loved Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. I thought they were a great team. Marv Albert, we all know Marv Albert's a legendary broadcaster. We all know Marv Albert. But Mike Fratello, to me, was the key. Because Mike Fratello, once again, he educated the fans, right? He was like a Hubie Brown, but younger, right? He would break down, once again, he was called the Czar of the Telestrator for a reason. He could break down the thing break down the game, the play, whatever you were looking at. He could break it down on the screen for you with the lines, with the X's and O's, the arrows, all that stuff, man. And once again, when he spoke during the broadcast, he always gave you the perspective. He educated you, man. He gave you the context behind these things, man. So I always liked Mike Fratello, Marv Albert. To me, they were one of the great duos in the NBA that I remember, growing up watching in the 90s, guys. Like I said, I love when Magic Johnson joined the booth because Magic Johnson added a little bit of flair to their duo. We all know about Magic Johnson, remember in the 1992 NBA Finals, right? That's what Michael Jordan was shrugging to. He was shrugging to Magic Johnson. He was like, yo, man, I can't believe this, right? And that's what Magic Johnson was talking about, man. You guys remember Magic Johnson often saying these things, man. It's Michael Jordan's game, right? I remember him saying that. I think they were playing against the New York Knicks. I think that was the 1992 playoffs. I want to say it was the 92 playoffs when they were playing against the New York Knicks. And he's like, it's Michael Jordan's game, right? And, and you heard Magic Johnson in the finals when he says, like, Michael Jordan looked over us and he gave us the shrug, man. Like, I appreciated and enjoyed Magic Johnson in the booth, man. Even guys like Bill Walton, rest in peace to Bill Walton, man. I always liked Bill Walton in the booth also, man. To me, once again, Bill Walton always gave historical context, man. Bill Walton was one of those guys where up until the end, he always talked about Bill Russell and some of the older generational players, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, some of the guys that he went against back in them 70s. The 80s guys. Bill Walton was always one of those guys that always put historical context into perspective, man. When people were talking about Michael Jordan and how great Michael Jordan was, here comes Bill Walton with the Bill Russell stuff. He always did that. That's what he always did, man. He represented for the other past eras that maybe people were forgetting about. And like I said, I used to always love the things that he would say in the booth, man. He said some really funny things, some really colorful things. Throw it down, big man. I used to love when he would say that. Throw it down. Like, shout out to Bill Walton. Like I said, man, rest in peace of Bill Walton. The guy was great at everything he did, man. I love listening to Bill Walton. He spoke with love of the game. Like when you heard Bill Walton speak in the booth, man, you could tell he was there enjoying himself. He loved basketball and talking about basketball. So shout out to Bill Walton, man. Like I said, I really appreciated him. Even a Doug Collins, I like Doug Collins from time to time up there in the booth with the Marv Albert, late 90s. Even Isaiah Thomas, even though I don't like Isaiah Thomas really personally, I think he's envious, jealous, and he's a straight liar. But in the booth, he was pretty good. He was in that booth with Marv Albert and I believe Doug Collins. I believe in the 98 NBA Finals, maybe 97, 98 NBA Finals. I think he ended up being in there. But shout out to those guys, man. Dick Versace. Rest in peace to Dick Versace. I thought Dick Versace was very colorful on the broadcast. But you guys know the deal, man. The broadcasters, as far as it relates to basketball, man, you remember some of these guys. And to me, I always loved Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. I remember them, man. I remember Mike Fratello. I always liked Mike Fratello, man. I don't know why. Like I said, I don't know what it was about him. But the czar of the telestrator, man, this dude would break it down. Like I said, they educated you. You respected these guys. They didn't sound cheesy or corny. They weren't saying these generic weird statements during the games. And like I said, they always gave props to the previous eras. One of the things I remember, oftentimes, like I said, when people would talk about Michael Jordan and they'd be broadcasting a game, for example, Michael Jordan would set a record or, break some scoring record or set a scoring milestone, whatever the case may be, right? Michael Jordan was always doing something, right? All these scoring titles, all this stuff. Oftentimes, people would bring up Wilt Chamberlain. They would bring up Wilt Chamberlain and the records that Wilt Chamberlain had, the scoring prowess of a Wilt Chamberlain, the greatness of a Wilt Chamberlain. And I remember, as a kid growing up, oftentimes when you saw Michael Jordan on these lists, right, it would have Michael Jordan at the top of this list, and it would say, Michael Jordan, the first player to do XYZ, or Michael Jordan, the first player since XYZ to do this. Oftentimes, it was the first player since Wilt Chamberlain, or oftentimes they had to put an asterisk there and say, after the merger, since the merger, because all the records were held by Wilt Chamberlain. And they let you know that. They put those things into perspective, into context. As great as Michael Jordan was, all the great things he was doing at that time, Wilt Chamberlain was doing other things, crazier things. There was always an asterisk and Wilt Chamberlain's name there. As I remember growing up, they always tried to give credit to the previous eras, the Oscar Robertsons, the Kareem Abdul-Jabbars, the Magic Johnsons, the Bill Russells. Right? They try to give these guys their just due. They mention these guys often, man. Today, they crap on the past eras to lift this era up. That's why when you listen to the broadcast booth, it's toxic. Because everything now is the greatest of all time. Oh, this guy's the greatest of all time. This guy's the best at this. This guy's the best at that. This guy's the fastest. This guy's the strongest. This guy's going to jump the high. Everything now is the best. Everyone in the past eras, they weren't even playing basketball. I don't know what they were playing back in the day. But it wasn't basketball according to a lot of these cornballs broadcasting these games. It's a damn shame, too, because once again, all that's doing is tearing down the NBA's history. I told you, how great can the players today be if they're not standing on greatness? If the previous eras weren't that great, then what the hell are these guys standing on? You're not standing on anything. They're only as great as the previous eras before you. If these guys were garbage, then you guys aren't really that great either, man. These guys were great back in the day. That's why we say you have to stand on the shoulders of the greats that came before you. Today, these guys don't want to stand on the shoulders of the guys before them. They think that they're a whole nother league. It's not the truth, guys. Ain't the facts. This is why a lot of these guys today are not as respected as a lot of the players from the past, man. So shout out to all those broadcasters. Like I said, man, there's many other guys you guys can mention. Maybe guys that you grew up watching, maybe local guys in your area that you remember listening to. I told you, Walt Clyde Frazier was that guy for me, man, as far as it relates to the New York Knicks. And like I said, the broadcasting, the way he spoke, the flair, the style. Like I told you, Hugh B. Brown was always a favorite of mine. I told you, Bob Costas always had cool things to say. I enjoyed Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas, Bill Walton, and once again, Marv Albert and Mike Fratello. To me, they were a really great team, a great duo, man. They had a great camaraderie on the screen in the booth, man. So shout out to Mike Fratello. He never gets mentioned much, but I always appreciate Mike Fratello, man. So I just wanted to do a quick video to highlight some of the guys that I grew up listening to in the broadcast booth and how they educated us. They respected the history of the game. They respected the current players, right? And like I said, they educated the fans. They gave you historical perspective and context behind a lot of this stuff, man. You guys know the deal, man. I'll catch you guys on the next one.